Okay, it's about 3 minutes past 10, so I think we'll begin now. Welcome to this webinar on how to ensure successful shopping in Q4. My name is Brett Lawrence and I'm one of the senior consultants here at Invika. Today I'm alongside representatives from Turnbull and Asser and also Nosto, who are going to share with you their first-hand knowledge and experiences around how to maximise your Q4 results. So first up after me is Lewis Hamilton, who's Head of Ecom at Turnbull and Asser. Turnbull and Asser are a 130-year-old Royal Warrant holding menswear brand with branches in London and New York, in addition to their Magento enterprise commerce platform. Now, Lewis heads up the UK and the US commerce team, and today he's going to be talking around the pitfalls of launching or relaunching a new site in Q4 and what the Turnbull and Asser team learned from that experience. Following Lewis will be Patrick from Nosto. Nosto are one of Invika's technology partners, and they're currently serving over 20,000 retailers worldwide. The Nosto personalisation platform enables online retailers to deliver customers' personalised shopping experience at every touch point across every device. Patrick's going to be taking a deep dive into the fashion industry and sharing some key stats and trends. Now, following Patrick, there'll be a bit of time for a Q&A session, so please feel free to add your questions either now or during the session under the questions tab, and we'll try and cover off as many as we can. So, a bit more about Invika. We're a technology partner that puts your business first. We're specialists in e-commerce and content management systems. We help pioneering brands and organisations to engage, convert and retain their customers through digital innovation. We're an experienced team of e-commerce specialists, and we've developed a reputation as a leading e-com partner. In terms of platforms, we're a Magento Gold Solution partner, a Demandware, or nowadays a Salesforce Commerce Cloud partner, and more recently we've been selected as the UK's only partner for a relatively new commerce platform, Spryker. We've got offices across the UK and Europe. We employ more than 200 professionals, including software engineers, business analysts, project managers and designers. And it's a combination that's supported a prestigious and growing roster of clients, including Turnbull and Asser, Misguided, Victoria Beckham, Radley London, Dreams, Graves and many more across a range of industries. So, Q4, what's at stake over the next few months? Well, last year, £12.4 billion was spent on fashion online in the UK, and that was up 16% from 2014. For the fashion industry, Q4 figures can be the key to success or failure of the trading year, and that's due to two specific significant trading spikes, Christmas and more recently Cyber Weekend. In 2015, online UK retailers took over £24 billion online in the 8-week Christmas period between the 1st of November and Boxing Day. And that's a 12% rise from the previous year and a significant chunk of the £114 billion spent online during the whole of 2015. Now, the greatest concentration of sales during last year was in Cyber Weekend. So, regardless of the fact that some brands are trying to downplay its importance, play it off as a bit of an American fad, just like Halloween, it seems to be taking hold in the UK. So, while some retailers reported disappointing numbers last year, overall sales suggest that customers absolutely love Cyber Weekend, and they spent around £3.3 billion last year. So this year they're going to be expecting their favourite fashion brands to get on board again and give them some really good deals. Analysts are predicting at the moment a £5 billion spend across the whole of the Cyber Weekend this year. So it's a huge opportunity not to be ready for. And some are actually speculating that Black Friday itself could be the biggest UK day for online retail ever. So with so much revenue up for grabs, it's really important to ensure that your e-com channels can handle the increase of inbound traffic during peak season. Last year, some big names got it very wrong indeed. Successful marketing campaigns and flash sales can put immense pressure on your website, Huge traffic spikes mean that underprepared retailers risk their sites falling over completely. And obviously, any such outage can spell absolute disaster as disappointed customers lose faith in brands and find alternative destinations to make their purchases. So a bit of a client success story for us here at Invica. Before engaging with Invica, Misguided was suffering from severe performance issues on the site. The site was falling over at around 7,000 concurrent users during peak, and obviously this resulted in some really high levels of lost sales. Following our engagement, we stabilised their site and we allowed them to achieve 15,500 concurrent users and around 1.1 orders per second over Cyber Weekend 2014, and that was with zero downtime. That's numbers that they surpassed last year, and again with no performance issues. But beyond just stability, it's key that your site can live up to your expectations of your customers when it comes to performance. As customers continue to shift from browsing on a desktop to mobile devices, slow performance becomes even more apparent. It's absolutely essential to ensure that your site is designed and stress tested around mobile customers who might have slow or even intermittent connection speeds. So regardless of device, site-wide performance is essential. So consider options such as image compression. Obviously, while detail matters on a mobile data connection, it's more important to see it within a few seconds than to get some amazing high-res image. Invest in a content delivery network that does more than just store your images. Look for one that can accelerate all of the data on your site. And use caching effectively as well. So caching content for a few minutes or even just a few seconds during peak can help give your users a much better experience and allow them to convert into customers. Now, I guess what I'm saying here is that new site features aren't necessarily the best way to positively impact peak season. Instead, what you need to do is to look to focus on enabling the customer to find product, purchase it quickly, cleanly, simply. So let's talk briefly about personalization. During Q4, and in particular the run up to Christmas, customers are going to have their inboxes bombarded with email campaigns trying to convince them to spend their money. You'll be doing it, your competitors will be doing it, and so will everyone else across a whole range of industries. Personalized experience is what helps build trust in your brand by showing the customer that you understand their browsing and their purchase habits. Furthermore, by keeping content highly relevant and tailored to them, you can encourage a fickle customer base to remain engaged and more likely to convert. However, customers are becoming more and more wary of blanket campaigns and therefore expecting a more personalized conversation with their preferred brands. So basically, personalization needs to be personal, not just putting your customers into a segmented group. Recommending highly relevant products is key to encouraging customers to return to your online store, and by doing so with emails, your click-through rates will increase. Now, Nosto's personalized triggered emails have an average click-through rate of 10 times higher than the industry standards. So it just shows what you can do. On site, the message to your customer needs to be the same. We understand you, not just your demographic. Recommending product and displaying content based on a previous purchase or browsing history, that will help encourage conversion as your customer's experience becomes a lot more relevant to them. Now, all this is great, but one word of warning. It's absolutely essential you don't overstep the mark when it comes to personalization. Consider how applied customer knowledge lends itself to enhancing your customer's experience, but don't make it too creepy. If your customer would be concerned as to how you know the information about them, take time to consider whether or not you should use it, or if you are, how are you going to use it. So lastly, I want to talk very briefly around post-purchase. So increased orders during Q4 can put enormous stress on operations downstream. Any lapse in service is going to reflect badly, it's going to annoy your customer, and it's going to increase the risk of losing that customer in the longer term. Now, whilst ramping up warehouse and picking resources during peak to handle increased orders is commonplace, many retailers lose sight of the need to ensure that in-store collection facilities can meet increased customer footfall, especially busy periods such as lunch times, immediately after work. And anyone that's worked on Oxford Street over the last couple of years will know exactly what I'm talking about, with the big department stores really getting it wrong last year and the year before. Around 14% of last year's UK Black Friday orders used click and collect. So it's absolutely key to ensure your stores have an effective operational process in place with the right supporting technology to turn around collections as fast and pain-free as possible. Now, further to this, intelligent use of customer insight, collection points can offer the perfect place for upselling to customers, but only when your store resources allow you to do so. There's no point having a massive queue of 20 people waiting to collect an order and you spending time trying to upsell to the person at the front of the queue. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of what's at stake in Q4 and a few quick ideas as to how you can maximise benefit from it. Lewis is up next, and as I mentioned earlier, he's going to be talking about his experience and learnings from the relaunch of the Turnbull and Asser site in Q4. Lewis, over to you.
Thank you, Brett. Good morning, everybody. As Brett alluded to, I wanted to go through some personal experiences of launching in peak. It wasn't something we intended to do. It was something we'd done with our previous development company, and just some words of warning on it and what to do if you're going to do it anyway. Just following that up with some learnings from understanding the luxury consumer a bit better from the last 5 years of being within luxury and making that transition from high street brands, and then just ending with some quick wins. So things which I'm sure you're all thinking about, but things that we're taking steps to achieve and make sure we have a positive peak trading season. So moving on to the foolproof guide to relaunching your site in peak. And of course, that doesn't exist at all. So first advice would be, if you have any choice of the matter, not to do it. I've just gone through some really top line reasons here why, some considerations to run through before you make the decision to launch through peak trading. I think first off, peak trading is a difficult one to actually put dates around. Christmas itself has been extended in retail, and especially with the introduction of Black Friday and the whole Cyber Weekend, everything's been brought forward. So all the stores, in store, you're seeing Christmas displays, Christmas windows coming in as early as September, some even earlier. And of course, that lasts right up until Christmas Eve itself. So this period in which you shouldn't launch, I think, would be good advice, has actually become bigger. So within this, the first reason I put, one which we experienced ourselves, is that UAT and testing will be squeezed. So it's something not to take lightly, because the end result of that really is that mistakes are likely to hit the live site. Customers are going to spot them. They'll have a bad experience of your new website and probably wish you had the old one back up. And ultimately, you may end up losing customers. The next one is there's no room for error. So if you have an absolute line in the sand of, okay, we're going to launch in peak, it's going to be Q4, but we can't go any later than the 15th of November because Black Friday is coming up, we need to be stable, and everything else that goes along with peak trading, you've got no room for error. So any slippage within that is just going to impact what you can go live with, or mean that you can't test your site at all before going live. The next is distracting the teams. This is one which is probably the last considered, but one of the most important. So Q4, even with all the best technologies, including Nosto, including your email service provider, and leaning on your technology partner as we do with Invica, you still rely on your own team to trade the site. So whether that's coming up with ideas around the homepage, around merchandising categories, around what we should be communicating, if you're pushing those people who should be making those decisions to test the new site, to make sure the features and functionality are living up to the design, they're not able to trade the current site. Lastly, going live with high traffic is risky. And as Brett alluded to in his presentation with regards to misguided, clearly the further we get through Black Friday becoming a mainstay and Cyber Weekend, more and more people are shopping online. We are expecting uplifts as businesses. And of course, through this period, you're going to expect more traffic than you've ever had before. So within this, if you're launching, you haven't had a chance to load test, you haven't really had a chance to sort of stress test your site properly, then you could well experience extended periods of downtime. You could then find that the hosting infrastructure wasn't suitable at all and therefore have to re-engineer that. And that can be a matter of weeks before you can go back live with that. Ultimately, it's lost revenue. So you're going to do it anyway. If you're going through this process now, of course, you're not going to stop everything. Your senior stakeholders will be keen to get your new site live as quickly as possible. So just some tips of what we learned through our process. Firstly, was gain the support of the wider business. Obviously, easier said than done sometimes. But I think if you can pull from internal business units, get them involved, I think, number one, the wider business always appreciates being involved in these larger projects, especially with e-commerce, as it really is the face of the brand. You can help them with testing and UAT on repetitive pages, so product pages, category pages, where they hold the same format. Why not pass some of that over to the wider business? They don't need to have the in-depth e-commerce and digital knowledge that you do. Get them to feed back to you. And it can help your team focus on new sign-off, so the bigger pages that do require the understanding of someone who's been within the e-commerce and digital teams. Hosting, I think, as a quote that I use quite a bit. So my CEO or managing director once said there's nothing worse than a newly launched website going down. And I managed to prove him very wrong last year, as really there's nothing worse than a newly launched website going down during peak. Get involved with your hosting partner. Obviously, choose them wisely. There's a few big competitors out there. Make sure you stress test, load test, put a lot of concurrent users onto your website through the checkout process before you launch at all. That'll sort of best set you up for peak. And I always go, nowadays, if I'm preparing for peak, I will go 30% more than my highest expectations, just to make sure we are going to serve those customers as quickly as possible. Lastly is focus. So focus your stakeholders and yourself. So I had mentioned earlier the idea of there's a line in the sand and you have to launch on that day, no questions. Then you're going to have to prioritize. So what's more important, HTML5 video on the homepage or PayPal integration? So mapping out those elements will help you prioritize that. And I think one way to think about this is in a physical retail environment. If you were launching a new store and you were launching during peak and you had an absolute day in the diary that you had to do it due to press and everything else, would you stop that launch from happening if the final bits of the window hadn't turned up? So if you're missing one mannequin, or would you stop it if you had no tills in? And I think the way to prioritize is just to think about that customer journey and make sure they're always at the forefront. As always, you will have more pressure on you launching during peak, but I think with focus, with strong technical competencies from your agency and really good project management, then you can get through it and you can have a successful peak launch. So next, just wanted to touch lightly on learnings from Turnbull and Asser certainly, but also other luxury businesses that I've worked with, and just going through not necessarily how a luxury consumer differs at Christmas, but how they expect their service to be and their experience on your website. So just going through the top three really, from customer services to fulfillment and packaging. So the expectations of a luxury consumer around peak and actually around any time, from customer services, they want a reply immediately to let them know that you've received the question or issue. They want a considered response rather than a templated one. So within the high street sector, you tend to find that responses can be templated and they can answer a query very quickly. And that 1 hour window to respond to someone is probably more important to that consumer. A luxury consumer is probably going to want a much more considered response. They would like to deal with the same person for every query, which is often impossible for a high street business. They need customer service to be available at non-work times, so weekends and evenings are quite key for them. And they want to be able to pay in a way that suits them. PayPal, gift card, local currencies. Within fulfillment, I spoke to Brett about this yesterday. I think the main difference between a luxury consumer and a high street consumer seems to be that they want the goods at a time that is convenient for them, not necessarily as soon as possible. I think, of course, both apply to both, but luxury consumers want that window they can choose which suits them. They expect a free shipping option, but are willing to pay for that convenience. When having to return something, they don't want to queue to return, so no Royal Mail. They want someone ideally to come and pick it up from wherever they are. They want regular and accurate tracking updates and a signed for service for security. They expect, of course, as Brett alluded to be able to collect in store. They don't consider stock outages to be an option, so if it's on your website, it can be purchased. They expect a premium courier, so the very top of that is the Net-a-Porter, Miss-a-Porter examples with a branded courier. Next, it might be DPD, who offer the tracked services and the accurate tracking updates regularly. And lastly, just touching on packaging, so luxury gift wrapping, a degree of personalization, and hopefully minimum wastage and easy to carry, so not having boxes within boxes because that's the only size the warehouse has got. So the last part here from me is just some notes on how we're preparing for peak. And I've spoken about it already, but getting close to your hosting partner. So load testing alongside your hosting partner will minimize the risks of the site going down when it's under extreme pressure. So the likes of Invica have obviously very used to this and working alongside a hosting partner. In our case, it's Rackspace, who can work with third-party tools to really ramp up traffic on your site on a test environment and do it until it goes down. So the ideal would be to do it well ahead of peak, test it, try and break the infrastructure, implement change, and test again until you're 100% happy. And next is getting close to all of your partners. So whether it's Nosto or Invica, your email platform provider or your logistics company, they all have wider experiences than you as an individual and even your team. They work with many other businesses, larger, smaller, more intricate, more complicated. And in my experience, setting up these meetings ahead of peak proves invaluable. So having a face-to-face meeting where you can discuss peak planning means you can really lean on them. They'll bring their shared experiences and hopefully give you some information outside of what you're expecting. And the last part is really just some takeaway bits. So stock levels, so making sure you actually have enough stock to deal with your forecast through peak and through sale. If you don't have the stock, you can't make your targets. Using your stores for visual cue ideas. So Christmas, if you have a physical retail environment, is often led by the stores. So take that and try to apply that into your website where it works. Work with businesses in your vertical to sell your goods for you. So we do try to operate with other like-minded German street brands who aren't competitors to pair up with. We can give them an exclusive offer to share with their customers. We can do the same for them. And it really increases the size of your database and the people that you have to market to. Don't miss out on market opportunities. So discount's a dirty word in luxury, but you will find that people will discount in season. And when people like Harrods or Selfridges or Harvey Nichols are selling your goods, you don't want to be missing out on that. So you may want to quietly represent that within your email strategy. Split your database. So something we learned a couple of years ago was that within our database, we had quite a lot of female customers, but they weren't really shopping until it came to peak. We found that during peak, around 30% of our purchases were made by females. So they probably don't want to know how to get dressed up for their office party, but they probably do want to know what you're suggesting for the ultimate gift. So we communicate to them very differently in that way. Showcase your services. So if you're offering same-day shipping, if you're offering easy returns and an extended return window, just make sure that's right at the front of the site. And lastly, I would say localize PPC to help the store. So do the store have experiential things they're doing? So champagne welcomes, evening shopping events. Make sure you're showcasing that to your customers via local PPC. That's it from me. I'm going to pass over to Patrick from Nosto now.
Thanks, Lewis. So for our part, really what we'll focus on is the online fashion report that we just came out a few weeks ago. And just to provide a bit of context, of course, for this, like why we did this. I mean, we're very privileged to work with over 20,000 retailers across the globe. And we wanted to really give something back to our community and draw from the insights and data we obviously have due to the nature of our work. And we studied about 241 million visits across a wide range of fashion retailers across Europe. So we had 6 areas that we focused on, and there are some quite interesting in a sense. Some of them are not that surprising, but I guess the volume of those, for example, growth numbers from year to year to 2015 to 16 was quite interesting. And then on the back of the results, I'll try to give a few pieces of tips that might be useful, particularly for Q4. So we'll try to keep this nice and short and make sure you get some insights that you can implement in your own business. So we'll focus on 4 different key performance indicators: traffic, conversion, average order value, and bounce rate. And apart from this, the actual report, you'll have also some figures on revenue and revenue increase that are quite interesting to have a look at as well. So starting from traffic, I mean, traffic is something that seems to be like the holy grail of e-commerce, and it's essentially the footfall into the store. But I feel sometimes a bit overhyped, and not all traffic is equal. Some, even if you get 1 billion people on the site, and 99% of them bounce, and 0.1% of them actually click on something out of which 1 out of 1,000 will buy, you'll end up with just a very, very minor number of people. So saying that though, there's been some interesting numbers that we noticed across geographical regions. So for me, at least, it was surprising that the UK had the highest growth numbers, so 28.7% year-on-year growth from H1 in 2015 to H1 2016. So we'll get to see how it continues for Q4. And what was even more interesting was that Germany was actually the highest grower in revenue, while being had least growth in traffic. So there's something I think to think about. Of course, something I guess less surprising is the distinction between the different devices. So mobile has already taken over tablet in terms of revenue, and now in terms of traffic, it's just thundering through with about 30% of the traffic on mobile, and it's grown by 50%. But something to remember for this year, so the Q4, is that we're still 54% with desktop in traffic. And it could be different for you guys, but still, you can't ignore desktop for now. Maybe next year it's different, but right now, if you ignore desktop, it's about half of your revenue might decrease. Some tips on traffic. As hopefully, out of all the tips I'll give you today, you already have done or thinking about 9 out of the 10. But my wish is that you'll have one that's going to be relevant for your business and that you can take away and actually implement later today. So first off, engaging content, quite self-explanatory, but sometimes forgotten. And things like gift ideas are just very nice things to read through when you don't really know what to get for your friends and close ones and family. Tailored email, we already alluded to this, but again, if you have a blanket email, which is the same for everyone, you might even have a percentage, big, huge discount mark there. I'm not going to be engaged unless I even know what's relevant out of all your products on your site. So make it personal to me. And qualified traffic, just as a quick point here. So if you are trying to get new prospects during the season, you'll find very quickly, regardless of the channel that you're advertising on, that the cost per acquisition is going to get really high. And what even Facebook, I was listening to a webinar they had a few weeks ago, even they were suggesting that focus on the qualified traffic, focus on the people who know you, and specifically advertise to people that maybe have been on the site with some of the things they might have looked at, and some of the things based on what the things they've looked at. So just again, making sure that you attract the right people on the site who will actually buy something. Conversion rate, I think it's more undervalued, but hugely important. And again, if you look at the stats first, UK had about 3.85 conversion rate on average across different devices in the fashion retail, which is actually the highest across the different markets we looked at. So you can benchmark to your own conversion rate to see if it's different. Across devices, nothing super surprising here. But again, I think my personal estimate will be that next year, once we get some of the new payment technologies for mobile more popular, these numbers will be quite different. But for now, you can see which ones actually will have the biggest impact on your bottom line. Few tips. Free shipping with clear returns, quite self-explanatory, but sometimes forgotten again. Streamlining payments. There's been a lot of innovation in the payment sector with obviously Apple and Android Pay, things like Klarna, Amazon payments. So I'd really suggest having a look at these players, hearing their pitch, and seeing if it's relevant for your business. So you don't want to be the last adopter because it'll have an impact on your bottom line again. And then finally, urgency. Unless you're like a huge luxury brand, don't be afraid to use urgency. It psychologically just works. And here's an example from Present Finder, one of our clients in the gift sector. And obviously for them, Q4 is everything. And you can maybe take a few pages from their playbook to make it better. Average order value. So here it's obviously the number of products, but also the value of those products. And there's a few things that are quite interesting here. So again, to benchmark, in the UK, about £135, which is one of the highest after the Nordics. So something, I guess, less surprising. But if you're working in other markets besides the UK, I think it's good to acknowledge the fact that you have different AOVs across the different markets and accordingly then incentivize the teams. In terms of the tips, so exposing people to the different products, for example, on the product page. Some people know you from a certain thing, like in case of Temple and Astor, they might know them from shirts. And then when you expose them to the other things they sell, it just makes it easier to go beyond the thing that you were looking for. Dynamically upselling means basically that whatever you suggest on the product page is going to be slightly more expensive than the item you're looking at, or at least in the bracket where you're not downselling on yourself. And sometimes I see people having a dress for £500 and then they suggest an item for £100. And when they recommend that, essentially you're just giving up £400 for no reason, which obviously hurts average order value. And then finally, when it comes to Q4, people have a budget when they shop for someone. Let's say I'm shopping for my aunt and my budget is 60, or let's say £30. Now, if I came and found this nice hand wash from Cowshed, I'll fill my half of it and then I'll go to buy the rest of it with somewhere else. But as you can see here, they're suggesting me items to fill my budget and make it easy for me. Instead of going somewhere else, I can actually just buy everything from one place, and obviously doubling the average value that Cowshed has on me. Finally, bounce rates. I think, again, hugely undervalued. Essentially, every percent of bounce on the, let's say, product page where you drive your traffic to is wasted marketing money. And currently, the average for fashion in the UK is about 41%. So anything beyond that, just basically means you might be wasting money. And in terms of tips, dynamic content, it could be interesting articles, stories out of the brand, the relevant products on the homepage and landing pages that make sense, and keep people engaged with the site before they decide to leave. Landing page optimization, so there's a lot of things you can do here. For example, tracking what people view on the landing page after coming to your page, and then showing the products they actually ultimately bought. And obviously, when you do that, you're able to personalize the experience for different campaigns that you do, and make sure that the landing page is optimized to each visitor. And then finally, if you look at the page on the right from Joy, if I don't quite like the item or the dress that I initially came to from a PPC campaign, I'm offered good alternatives that hey, actually, that black one looks nice. Let me check that one. If you don't do that, I'm much more likely to bounce for obvious reasons. I'm just go see what else there on Google Shopping and the competitors. So make sure you do offer the alternatives as easily as possible to me. So for other really cool stats, we'll send you on the back of this webinar the whole fashion report or a link for it. So please have a look at it. There's some cool stats. And now, just being aware of time, let's open the floor for Q&A. If you have any questions that you're maybe afraid to ask publicly, feel free to email any of us. If you want to hear more about Invika, Channel Nasser, or Nosto, we're here to help. So you'll have our emails here. So let's see if we have any questions. Brett, anything you want to add before we wrap up, if there's no questions?
No, nothing from me, Patrick. Just like again to thank yourself and Lewis, and yeah, follow up on what you said there. If anyone does have any additional questions that they want to ask any of us, then our email addresses are there, and please feel free to get in contact.
Thanks, Brett. And there was a question from Hege about will we provide a link to the recording? And the answer is yes. So as you might have noticed, we are recording this, so you'll get to see the stats and some of the insights from all of us, including Lewis. So we'll definitely provide you the recording, and you can share with your colleagues. So definitely. Cool. Anything else from anyone before we wrap up? No, doesn't seem like that. So hey, thanks everyone for joining. It's very much our pleasure. And Brad, Lewis, thank you for sharing your knowledge. Hopefully it was valuable to you. So I wish you all a successful Q4. Let's use the insights and have a nice rest. We'll feel rewarded at the end of it. So have a great week, everyone. Thanks again for attending.
Thank you, Patrick.